Hello and welcome to this masterclass on how I created my career. I am thrilled that you signed up for this and that you've chosen to be here today, that you've chosen to listen to my story. And if you're here, I like to think that it's telling. You know, when I was advertising for this masterclass and inviting people to participate, the first thing that I wrote in terms of who is this for is if you are someone where life is good, but you know that it could be great. And if you think of your own life in this moment, I wonder how much that resonates, how much it's true. Most often, my clients are individuals where they're pretty amazing at what they do. They know that they're badasses, and they know at the same time that they are not living their full potential. They're not doing all that they could be doing. They don't quite feel like they have it all. There's something off kilter, something off balance. And there's just this feeling and this calling to fully step into who they are. And my intention behind hosting this masterclass is to share my story of how I got to where I am today and how I have chosen consistently and persistently to create my own career. And it has not been without its challenges. So I want to be very honest with you today in terms of how I have managed those ups and downs and become more and more clear on what it means to create my career, what that actually looks like to shape it and to craft it. And I think a very important thing to highlight before we jump in is that when I talk about creating one's career, we anchor from that point. And I think for me, whether it's because I'm a Capricorn or just someone who likes achieving things, it is definitely something that gives my life a lot of purpose. And I've always been someone that really, really wanted to have a career that gives meaning, that makes a difference. I love working and I wanted that work to mean something. And it does mean something. I'm very fortunate that it does. And I know that that's been a very deliberate choice to step into. But at the same time, what's become more and more evident to me as I've gone through the iterations of making my career, and I've done that like 7 times now, and I've done a lot of pivots and zigzags, is how much creating our career is also in balance with creating the life that we want. It's not either or, it's both and. So, this is something I look at very holistically with my clients because we're always trying to look at what is it that you want to live in your personal life? How do you want your career to support you in that? Because our career is just one portion of our whole selves and our whole lives. So, that's something to get into. So, before we dive in and get into the agenda for today and all that we're going to cover, I want to invite you to do a little visioning meditation. And normally, when I start with a client, we never know where the day has taken us or what we've been through. And just to get really into the session and drop in, we'll do a little clearing meditation to arrive. So, no matter what kind of day you've been having so far, whether you're just starting your day or you're getting ready for bed or you're on your way to work, I want to invite you to take a moment for yourself to close your eyes now. I'm going to close my eyes too. And take a big, deep breath in and let it out. Go ahead and get comfortable wherever you're sitting. If you're moving about, maybe take a second to pause. Feel your feet on the ground and center in. And take another inhale in. Exhale, release. Let's do that one more time. Inhale in and release. Just keep breathing deeply as you listen to the sound of my voice. I want to take a moment for you to think back to when you were a little kid. What did you want to be when you grew up? When people would ask you that question, what did you want to be? Feel that excitement you might have experienced as a child, thinking about all that the future had in store for you, how exciting life can be, how wonderful to be able to choose a career, to choose who you want to be when you grow up, the power in that. And then take a moment to feel, are there any things where you feel that you had to be something, to be someone? some form of expectation. Whether you set that on yourself, you were told that from a family member, you were told that from your culture, the people around you, that you had to be a certain way or grow up to be a certain kind of thing, a certain kind of person. Take a breath into that and let it out. And if you go ahead and feel into yourself, what have you always known to be true for you? What was always meant to be? So often when we move through life, it's with others' expectations in mind. And that can dim our own lights. We feel like we can't quite be ourselves because it's not quite okay. And as you get ready to listen to my story, I want you to get in touch with that childlike feeling and that excitement of, ooh, this is what I have to show the world. This is what I can be. This is what I can do. This is who I can serve. This is all the greatness that is yet to come. And feel in, where do you have that in your life right now? Where are you so excited about life and all that you're becoming? And then where do you maybe feel some stickiness? I'm like, ugh, that's not me. That's not what I want. Or I'm not fully showing up. I'm not fully being who I know I can be. I'm not bringing all my gifts to the table. And choose right now, who do you want to be? How do you want to show up? Who are you becoming? You can have it all and you will have it all, but it's up to you to choose that and to choose that to be your story. You have to believe, because when you believe and you can ask for what you want, then it is yours. Then anything is possible. Take another breath in and let it out. Take a few more breaths. And then when you're ready, you can open your eyes, come back to me. And if you'd like, you're more than welcome to pause this and write down if anything came up for you. What was your first reaction? Where did your thoughts go? Whatever it might be. Write it down with pen and paper. Maybe send yourself a text message, write yourself an email. I tend to do that too whenever I get inspired. So, why I bring this up in our meditation is, one, to get us grounded, but also to bring us back to who we truly are. Because the task of creating our career is about showing up in this world as ourselves and really bringing ourselves to the table, really sharing our gifts, really serving others, and understanding that that's what creating an impact is. When we fully show up as who we are, we have the greatest impact as possible. And it can take so much work to just get to that point where it's okay to be you. And you feel that 100%. And you know you can get paid for that. You can be highly paid for that. You do not need to do more, be more, other than show up and fully own who you are. And while that's the key takeaway that I want you to take away from today, I also want to just lay a couple ground rules in terms of how we're going to go through this. So, one is that I know that you are on your own journey and that you are wherever you are right now in terms of creating your own career. And I'll be talking about a whole bunch of different things today, but listen for the value. Know that you came here to get the value and that there's going to be something that sticks with you today that you just know, I was meant to hear that. That's what I came for today. And really lean into that golden nugget of, okay, that was for me. Two is, I ask that you don't have any judgment for me. My intention for today is to be as honest as possible and to talk about like the good and the bad and everything in between. And that is just the hope that I have too. It's always vulnerable to share your own story. So please send me some love through the interwebs if you're feeling this and watching this. And then two, if you or three, if you really, really enjoy this today, please take a screenshot, tag me on Instagram, send me a message, let me know that you watched it, let me know what you liked about it, send it to a friend. This is really meant to serve and inspire others too. So with that, let's go ahead and jump in. I'm going to share my screen so that we can get a move on here. Yeah, so how I created my career. This is going to be a lot of fun today. So in terms of where do we begin? The agenda is that I will start by just sharing my story and talking about where I started my career, how I got to where I am today, working on the future of food and ultimately building my own business. I'm also going to share a little bit about my current vision. So, visioning work is something I do a lot with my clients, and it's work that never stops. Life is constantly a work in progress, and it's very healthy to quarterly or yearly check in on what is my vision? Do I remember my vision? Did I forget my vision? And then also to keep setting it time and time again. Then we'll do some key takeaways before talking about the Creating Your Career coaching program in case that's interesting for you. And then we'll do Q&A as well. I received a bunch of your questions, so we'll dive into that too. So I asked you that question of when you were a little kid, who did you want to be when you grew up? When you got asked that question, what came to mind? When I was a little girl, I really wanted to be a rock star. That was the first thing that I remember being. And if I'm totally honest, I'm still a bit of a rock star today in my own world, and I still get to speak on stages around the world. But that was the first inclination I had in terms of when I grow up, this is the joy I want to spread in the world. This is the thing that I really want to do. And that is my brother, who is still my sidekick today and has been the best backup possible. But as I got a little bit older, and I would say when I was 13, my answer changed. I went from really wanting to be a rock star and a singer and having that be my Halloween costume year after year to then saying, I want to be an international business tycoon. And somewhere in our family, like storage, we definitely have this paper where I wrote it down. I tried to find it for this presentation and I couldn't. But I remember being a young tween teenager, and I would spend hours playing Roller Coaster Business Tycoon, which is how I think I got the word tycoon in my head. And I loved the idea of building empires and making money. And I thought that was so cool. And at the same time, I felt a very deep desire to make an impact and to really have an impact with my life. And that started showing up when I was pretty young. I would be raising money for things. I'd want to stand up for what was right. There's this story that when I was a little kid, I heard about the one child policy in China. And I just thought that was so outrageous that I packed my suitcase and told my parents I was going to the airport because I couldn't stand for it. And I just wanted to fix that. Like I just couldn't even believe it was true. So, where I got to the point of saying, when I grow up, I want to be an international business tycoon is really tapping into this understanding that international is anywhere and business is anything. And while I really wanted to make a difference, I also really didn't want to put myself in a box. As a kid, I was someone who liked to do a lot of different things. I liked to dabble in this and dabble in that. And when I got confronted with the situation of having to choose a major for college, which in many ways is the first time we have to really choose into what do we want to be when we grow up, what we want our career to be, that's laying the foundation. And it can feel like it sets some path dependency. That was when I was just like, how do I keep all my options open? And the answer to that really felt like, okay, well, business is anywhere and international is anything. That makes a lot of sense. So then I could do whatever I want. And there's a business behind every single kind of occupation. At the same time, I was gaining an increasing understanding that I originally also thought maybe I'd study politics. But as I learned more about politics, the more I felt like it was all talk and no doing. And at the same time, I realized that money moves politics. So I'll bring up money a couple times, and money's an interesting thing I talk to my clients about because it's important. And what we do with our money really matters too. But that was really my understanding of like, okay, if I work in business, then I can really make a difference. If I have money, then I can really make a difference. I can give to the causes I care about. I can create the change I want to create. And that's like the earliest departure, earliest notion I remember. So The other thing is that growing up, I was a little entrepreneur and I really didn't think of myself this way at all. But I would be the kid who would spend a whole year painting seashells and making lanyards so that I could sit for 1 week during summer vacation and sell to everybody that walked by. Again, you can see my brother is my partner in crime. I've enlisted him in many things over the years. But this was the first probably time I remember being someone that was like, I can make something happen. I can decide this. I can do this. I can go for it. I can choose what I want to spend my time on. And that was a pivotal moment now when I look back. But at the time, I would not own it. I would not be like, yeah, I'm an entrepreneur or like I have a lemonade stand. I did not think of it as anything that important or a big deal. So, fast forward, I knew I wanted to study international business, and that was what I was looking for when I was applying for colleges. If you grew up in the United States, then you probably resonate with my story that applying to college is extremely intense and it's extremely transformative because you are going to spend $250,000 on going to school somewhere. And you have to declare your major and make all these decisions at the same time that just feel like they're going to put you on a certain path in a certain way. And I worked extremely hard in college. And I applied to, I think, 12 different, not college. I worked extremely hard in high school. I applied to about 12 different American colleges, and I got rejected or waitlisted from all of them. And I was so broken when I got these rejection letters back. I went to a really tiny high school where everybody knew about everybody's business. And I remember when you would receive the letters from the university, people would know, like, oh, so and so university is sending out the letter today. And you'd go home for lunch to check your mail. And when you'd come back, everyone would like turn around in the classroom to look and be like, so did you get in? Did you not? And having to tell the room, no, I didn't get into my dream school. No, I didn't get into my backup school. I also didn't get in there, so on and so forth, was such an experience of shame for me. It really hurt my ego. I'd put in so many hours of work. I tried to be a straight A student. I tried to be perfect. I'd done all these hobbies. I'd taken student leadership positions. I'd learned other languages. The list went on. And yet I was not accepted anywhere. I did not feel good enough for anywhere. And I was mad. I was really, really mad. So at the same time, I still knew I wanted to study international business. And I was lucky enough that I was an exchange student when I was in high school. I went to Chile and I got into that program because my dad was also an exchange student from Denmark to the United States. And much of his friends and his best friends also come from Denmark and have been through AFS and been through this program. So one of those friends came to visit, and his son had just been to China. And he had then gone on to study at the Copenhagen Business School, particularly in the International Business Program, which is basically like the Harvard of Denmark. It was and maybe still is at the time. It was at the time and maybe still is the hardest program to get into in Denmark. So it was a huge thing. If you had the right GPA to get into that, it was basically all valedictorians going on to then run Denmark at some point in time by becoming captains of industry and stuff like that. So he told me about this program, and then he told me he got into something called the Globe program. When I heard that, it was like all the alarm bells went off, and I went, I need to do that thing. That is what I was meant to do. Because what I learned then is that CBS offered a bachelor's program called International Business. It was 3 years instead of 4. It was totally free to me to attend because I'm a Danish citizen. They would even pay me a monthly stipend, so I'd be making money on this investment. And then they had the Globe program, which offered the opportunity to go to Hong Kong and UNC Chapel Hill with 18 students from each business school in a 1.5 year long exchange program. So I was like, this is it. This is international and this is business and this is the two coming together and this could be so cool. So I applied to that. I will save the rest of the story because it was also a really big decision at 18 to, well, I can share a little bit. On August 1st, I found out that I got in. I'd already been accepted to an American school. I'd been to orientation. I'd chosen my classes. I was like waiting. And I remember waking up at 4 a.m. to call CBS because we couldn't wait for acceptance letter to be sent to America. That would have been like 2 weeks after school started, 2 weeks after that. So my dad and I woke up at 4 a.m. to call the admissions office and ask them if I got in. They said that I did. And then the next day I was on a plane to Copenhagen. So it was a very quick snap decision. It's also pretty crazy there. It's such a tiny country that you get accepted August 1st and then school starts 2 weeks later because they're not expecting people to move halfway across the world for that. But anyways, this was a bit of a fated decision. One in that I really knew that I really, really wanted to study IB. I really wanted to get into the Globe program. And I felt so much clarity around the decision to go to Copenhagen and make that decision to move there and take that leap of faith and move as an 18-year-old to a foreign country where I didn't speak the language or know anyone really. And that ended up being one of the best decisions of my life, even though at the time it felt like I was really sad and like didn't know what to do with myself. This was also a huge culture shock for me. And it's another example of when I stepped into my entrepreneurial mindset. And I think it goes back to the what I want to share here is that when you know what you want to do, things come really easy. And when I arrived at the Copenhagen Business School, I was expecting an American university. I had seen that idolized in the movies, and I was like, this is going to be my experience. I did not expect it to be a completely different setup. And I was really shocked that there was no student life. There was basically three or four or five organizations. There was the student politics, there was a sports team, there was case competition, and that was kind of it. Like there wasn't that much more going on. And I had come from the US where you basically identify yourself based on your hobbies and interests, and that's how you find your friends. And the first day of school, I kept walking around going, so what are you into? What do you like to do in your spare time? And all the Danes would be like, I drink beer and play soccer and, watch TV. And I just didn't get it. I didn't understand that that is not the same. That's not an American thing. But at the same time, I quickly learned that there was no student newspaper. And there had been something called CBS Observer. It was a paper for the school, an online paper, but it was written by Bjorn and Jorn, who were two middle-aged men. They weren't really in touch with what us youngins wanted. And it was crazy to me too that as a foreign student that came while I was Danish, I didn't have any of the benefits of being a foreign student. Like there was no getting to know you immersion program because I was considered a Dane. They didn't see a distinction there. So I had all the questions you would have if you're an 18-year-old moving in, being like, where do I get cheap beer? What is the best place to buy groceries? Where are the deals? Where should I go shopping? How do I integrate? All of that stuff didn't really exist. So I basically decided overnight to start the first student newspaper, and it was called CBS Life. And it was a huge hit. I also ended up getting into the Globe program that 6 months after starting this organization, I had to already pass the torch to different leadership. And they went ahead and did an amazing job. And it continued to last for about 5 years before it died. But the biggest thing that I felt and saw is that one, we really got in touch with what kids were feeling. So you can see them with the memes on the side, and they would become super shareable at the time. But two, how important community was to me. And this was one of the first moments where I really got in touch with that value. That's one of my core values is for me, community means coming together around a common cause, but it also means working together and, not putting on a production, but doing something amazing. And I very quickly found my people through doing something that I love and really pursuing that passion. And this was contagious. What shocked me how so much was when we set a clear vision for CBS Life, which was to promote life at CBS. It was relatively simple. So many people wanted to participate in that. And we just gave everyone whatever column they wanted to run with. They could contribute whatever they wanted, and people stepped up in the most amazing ways. So there was a holding of a vision and there was a clear values alignment. And then from there, the creative energy unfolded and it just went. And my other thing that I'm so proud of with this initiative is that we would spotlight every single new initiative that was coming up, and that enabled other people to join. So, as the key source of information, we were able to share, like, hey, this is a cool thing. And then people could go sign up. That by the time I graduated, there were about 300 different organizations at CBS when there had started with five. So I attribute that to sharing information, breaking down silos. And I bring this up because a lot of the work I do today still consists on sharing information and breaking down silos. But running a student newspaper was a totally different version, and one that you wouldn't think is connected necessarily to my story today, but it super is. It very much is, because everything in our journey is preparing us for the next thing. And maybe while we can't see it right now, we're learning things, we're learning skill sets that are going to be important later on and that are going to make a difference later on. So as I mentioned, I got into this Glow program. It was incredible. It was an insane experience getting to live in other cultures and communities. And at the same time, I was in a very, very deep community. I traveled with 53 kids around the world for a year and a half. There was a lot in that. And it again brought up for me how important it is to be with people who are values aligned, who share the same interest as me, to surround myself with good people, and how important it is to be with, yeah, just be in community. I will say that 5,000 times because it's one of my core values. My other core values, I'll say them now, are communication, leadership, and curiosity. And I'm not going to focus a lot of today's presentation on values. I'll do another masterclass talking specifically about that. But community is very much a red thread I see when I've looked at what have I been attracted to? What have I chosen? When I don't feel connected to a workplace, so often it's because that's missing for me. So I've had to be really thoughtful around what is it that creates community? What makes me feel that sense of connection? Who do I want to be around? And how can I participate in a way that feels like a mutual exchange? So at this time, and what I also loved about going to CBS is that we were almost all of the students were in a position of, okay, yes. So almost all of the students were in a position of taking a student job while they were studying, which was different than what you would do in America. Many people are just full time students. They're not working on the side of that. And particularly in Denmark, people weren't working in a cafe or something like that. They were working full time jobs or part time jobs in a management consulting company, in a large business. So they had real work, I'd say, that was like a feeder program into working for another organization and having a lifelong career with that organization. And I thought that was great because it basically enabled me to start working when I was 18. But I also felt knocked on my ass because you just heard me talk about how important community is to me. And when I started the IB program, I very quickly felt like I was not in the right place. So there was aspects that I really, really loved about it. But when I looked at the people and looked at their values and what mattered to them, then I was like, ooh, this is not what I signed up for because I wanted international business because international is everywhere and business is everything. And most of the people that were studying with me had a vision of international business as being investment banking or management consulting. And nearly every single person in the program was applying for the same jobs, had the same ambitions. And it was a very narrow mindset in terms of what does success look like. And I got caught up in that. It was very easy to get caught up in that. And I felt like, okay, I have to do this too. So I applied for consulting jobs and I did all this studying for that. And I didn't get it because it was not meant to be. And I don't think I should ever have done that. And I do consulting now, but my version of it. But I say this because it was really a jarring moment of being like, this is what everyone else is doing and what everyone else is saying. And I want to be liked by them. But at the same time, this isn't me. I don't agree with this. Like, I don't want to do this. This isn't why I did business. So that clarity helped me to understand, okay, I need to actually find what I want to do. And I just had this incredible experience on Globe, which I think if I hadn't gotten into Globe, I would have had a totally different university experience. And I really would have felt lost in some capacity because it put me in touch with my people as opposed to being in an environment where I didn't really feel seen. I didn't feel heard. I didn't feel like I could be myself. So where that led me is kind of realizing or waking up to the fact that I was interested in entrepreneurship in the startup community. And I do not remember how I was first exposed to the startup community, but I had some kind of light bulb moment where I understood, okay, I think I want to work with startups. That might have been the only thing I knew, or I was just curious to learn more. And living in Copenhagen at that time, that must have been about 12 years ago, 10 years ago ish, there was the bubbling of an entrepreneurial startup ecosystem coming together. So there was this big thing called Copenhagen for the Win. The idea was we're starting to see all of these startups and businesses come together, but we're not in a connected ecosystem. Like if we think of Silicon Valley is known as an ecosystem. People know each other and they're helping each other, from the investors to the entrepreneurs to the government funding to the university institutions. There's this feeling of we're an industry. What if we were to do something similar in Copenhagen? So they brought people together and it was an open invitation for anyone to come. And I think the first meeting was like 600 different people who were interested in the entrepreneurial ecosystem. And they called it Copenhagen for the Win, which is CPHFTW. And I remember I went to that meeting and I was like, this feels like my people. I felt so excited and energized being in that room. And I made the snap decision to make an ask. So this was at the time where Twitter was really cool and everyone was using it. So I went on Twitter and I made the ask of what I was looking for as a student job or position. And I again tried to look for my tweet. I couldn't find it because I deleted my account a few years ago. But I remember writing something like, looking for internship opportunities at a startup doing international business development, marketing, or communication. If this is you, let's talk. And I used the hashtag so people could find it. And it was also at a moment in the event where they said, everybody get out and tweet that you're here and like let the world know so we can trend on Twitter. And from this one tweet, which, it was a clear ask, but it was not the most detailed pitch of who I am and what I can do. I got 3 different responses back from different startups saying, hey, we're interested. Let's talk. And I ended up doing mini internships for all of them. So they were working pro bono with the idea that that would lead to something else, but also because I wanted to learn and see, is this something for me? And I was willing to take that risk. And I went a little bit overboard. I said yes to all 3 opportunities at the same time and only ended up proceeding with one. But it was still an amazing way and the first time I had a clear feedback loop of the importance of making a clear ask so that you can get what you want and other people can help you get what you want. Because I was also able to network and work that room and go around and say, yeah, I'm looking to work for a startup where I can work on business development, marketing, communication. Do you know anyone that's hiring? Oh, talk to so and so. Okay. And then, it goes from there. And this is something that I very much work with my clients on, is just getting clear on what do you want to do so that you can start talking about it, so that you can start attracting it and start planting seeds. Because as soon as your network knows what it is you want, people love to help. They want to help you. They're going to start thinking of it. They're going to have other conversations. They're going to be like, hey, you should talk to Analisa, or you should talk to so and so. So this is the beauty of making a clear ask and letting it unfold from there. So after I went ahead and did these like couple different internships, I at the time found Dare to Mansion. And I remember going to my interview at Dare to Mansion wearing a pencil skirt and a blazer, because again, I thought that's what you did if you work in business. And then I showed up at this place, which if you can't tell by the photo is quite funky. And it was an auto body repair shop that had been converted into a very cool startup co-working space. And the whole concept of Dare to Mansion was to bring diverse actors together, because when you bring together diversity, you have all kinds of innovation come out of that, because people think differently and you can learn from each other's best principles. And then you find the beauty in the similarities that are kind of at the edges, at the edge of the ecosystem. And oh my gosh, you can hear how excited I am. This spoke to me so deeply. And I remember sitting down in the interview, and I had 2 bosses, Lila and Chris. They were my bosses that hired me. But I remember sitting down with them, and they both were dressed really cool as well. And I was there in my pencil skirt, my kitten heels, just ridden my bike there. And I was like, okay, here we go. I'm going to get a job. I was very nervous. And I was very ready to tell them about all of my qualifications and why I'd be such a good marketing intern for them and communications intern. And then they just went, so what are you passionate about? What do you believe in? What is your vision for yourself? And I kept trying to be like, well, this is what the, job is and what I think are my qualifications. And they just bring me right back to that place of going, well, who are you really? What do you really stand for? What's important to you? How do you show up when you work? They wanted to know who I was as a person, because that ethic, that values alignment was more important than can I do XYZ job? And if you've worked in a startup, then you know this is true. What matters is if you drive with the culture and the people, because you can learn anything. That's actually true with most business. You can learn to do anything. It's more the matter of, are you really going to work well with the people? Are you going to be able to be yourself and to be able to shine? And if you can, then the sky's the limit. So this was the beginning of an incredible almost 5-year journey where I worked with Dare to Mansion, and I ran their accelerator program, Thinkubator. So this was, again, it was very focused on working with early stage startups. We also ran something called the Startup Bus, where we would select entrepreneurs and bring them on a roadshow all around Denmark. And they were basically rock stars for a week. We did a lot of really incredible things. And it was such an incredible time to meet so many great people. Again, like I speak about it with such joy because it was in a huge accelerated learning path for me. And it was one where I felt so incredibly at home. I also felt very pushed. Again, I think this is most jobs. If you're given a lot of responsibility, there's a question of, can you rise to the challenge of it? And if you really love what you're doing, yes, absolutely. If you don't, then it just feels like stress. But I had bosses who truly believed in me, who saw a vision for me that was way bigger than I was holding for myself, who really helped me to get outside of my comfort zone, who taught me so much about everything from the experience economy to how to really coach entrepreneurs to the struggles, and just gave me so much responsibility as like a 21, 22-year-old. And I say this because we then went from having this one building to then looking across the street and we launched Singularity U Nordic, which was one of the first international divisions of Singularity University. If you don't know Singularity University, they were the OGs when it came to talking about exponential technologies. So these days, we're hearing all the time about artificial intelligence and 3D printing and robotics and nanotech and biotech. And Ray Kurzweil and Peter Diamandis were some of the first to really talk about, okay, we're going to see this exponential development. We're going to see the singularity where man and machine merge. The prediction for that is still 2040. And they were helping to teach executives and leaders about what's coming in technology, the ethics around that, and then also doing a lot of work to support startups who are working on the cutting edge of bringing that technology into the world and then supporting them to make it possible, supporting those leaders to really build great companies and do great things. So my position was director of entrepreneurship and community. So that was a pretty big deal as like a 22-year-old, again, to have a director level position. I was in charge of a P&L, a profit and loss statement, and I was in charge of a 400-person community and also the programming that occurred in this building. So there was a lot of events, there was a lot of talking to people, a lot of ecosystem building, and really focusing on how do we break down silos between the different organizations who seemingly didn't have a lot in common, but actually were on a very similar journey of entrepreneurship. And then also all the corporations, the politicians, the journalists that would come through the halls to learn, and then connecting them and plugging them into that. So it was awesome. And I still remember the day that we put the sign up when we launched Singularity U Nordic. It was huge. It was so like, it just was a massive milestone. It was on the front page of the Danish paper. We had an incredible team with incredible getaways. And this was the workplace where I truly learned how much I had to give, how much of a talent I was, how anything is possible if you set your mind to it, and also how important community and values are, as well as celebrating diversity. So this just like set me in an understanding and even gave me the language to say today that I'm an ecosystem developer and I am someone that is able to bring a universe together, break down walls, connect people to unlock new ideas, unlock new partnerships. And that was really where I also thrived, is bringing people together in different ways, but also helping people to get out of their own way, because that's one of the biggest things I've seen since the very beginning of my career, is that so often when we're leaders in companies or trying to do something new and different, we just can talk ourselves down. We can get in our own ways. Things come up in the process. So working with a coach, working with someone who can help you see those blind spots can just make the ride so much easier. And truly, I do think all of your stuff comes up when you're working. It's just very natural. And this was also when I really got exposed to speaking on stages and doing that for work. When I was 8 years old, I started doing musical theater, and I did that from when I was 8 to 18. So I've always been on stages fulfilling that rock star dream of mine as a child. But this was also incredible. I was speaking at the Copenhagen Opera House on a stage. I was also in big auditoriums with all kinds of people. So this got me this showed me that there's a different universe of what being on a stage can look like and what speaking can look like. At the same time, I heard about Nest Copenhagen. And this was another moment where I went, I need to have that. And I want you to take a moment and think about any moment in your career, in your life, where you heard about something and you were just like, I need that. I need to do that. I need to be a part of that. You just had so much clarity that this was for you, no matter what it was going to happen. Like if you've had that moment, and I hope you've had that moment. If not, let's definitely work together so that you can have that moment, because it's truly the best feeling to just be like, oh my God, this is my thing. So one of the guys in my class, he got into this thing called Nest Copenhagen, which was a co-living space for entrepreneurs. And this is Nest right here, this place. It was 4 stories. We had 4 apartments with 60 people living across the 4 apartments, right across from the central station. And when I heard about it, I was like, no way, this is the coolest thing. And I remember seeing the photo online, seeing that my friend had gotten into it, and just being like, I need to be in this club. I need to be in it so much. At the same time, I had no entrepreneurial experience. I was just starting my first job. I was like making my way in the community, slowly networking, slowly getting to know people. Everyone getting into this place, because they had hundreds of applicants, were CEOs or developers who had been working in the startup ecosystem for 7 or more years. That was like the average number. So they were, the stalwarts. They'd really been around the block. They really knew things. And I was just like, oh boy, I don't know how this is going to happen. Why I really wanted to be in Nest is one, I think I missed community. So I'd just come off of Globe and I was very much wanting to live with other people and live in that dorm like experience. And I was also realizing that entrepreneurship was something I wanted to be around. And as I spoke about the undergrad experience, being in international business, I was like, I'm not an investment banker. I'm not a management consultant. I want to be with my people. And I was really learning that at Dare to Mansion too. There's that expression of you are the value of the 5 people you surround yourself with, or the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with. And that was just becoming so evident to me. The more I was putting myself in rooms of people who really aligned with what I think or who had what I wanted that I could learn from them, or it was they're a step ahead, whatever it might be, they inspired me, the more I felt like I was full of life. And I was just like, wow, this is just helping me to accelerate so much faster than I thought. So I did not get into Nest the first 3 times I applied. I just got rejected. I got rejected again, but I kept going. I kept applying. I kept voicing that I was really interested. And I kept making a case for myself saying, I might not have the most experience being the CEO of a company, but I'm really good at community building and I can cook dinners. I can organize events. I can do all kinds of things. And I list this as a career experience for 2 reasons. One is that I eventually did get in and it was one of the happiest days of my life. And most of the people that I lived with, sorry, we would have 20 roommates living at one time. But by the end of my stay at Nest, which is over about 5 years, I had lived with 60 different entrepreneurs. And they were everything from designers to product developers to executives. The list goes on. But I had such an inside look at what entrepreneurship really takes. And I know that this is what makes me a great leadership and this is what makes me a great entrepreneurial coach today because I have seen it, I have felt it. I have been up talking with entrepreneurs until the wee hours of the morning. I've seen them on the best days and the worst days, on the days where they thought that they were losing their company and on the days where they landed the funding and it felt like anything was possible. I've seen it all and I've heard it all and I learned so much in that time. Also, about people really keeping their word. I think one of the hardest things about living in this community is that it was a self organized community. So we had to carry out all the activities. And I ended up taking on the role of chief communications officer. And then also, and I got us in Inc. magazine and we were in the IKEA magazine. We had a couple really cool opportunities. But I went to become the chairman, which meant I had the full responsibility of running the community. And I remember feeling so disappointed at times by these entrepreneurs who on the outside would put up a face that everything was amazing and then come home would totally go into their shell. Or they would come home and they were supposed to do something and they would not show up. They would not do what they agreed to for the community. They would not keep their word. And that's a really fine line to walk when you're living with people and you want to be friends, but at the same time, you have a working relationship and how to manage it. So there was a lot of big growth and learning opportunities, but it was also just seriously so much fun. I also lived with a lot of guys, as you will see in these photos. The majority of my roommates were men, but I learned about talking to more introverted people who are developers and like to code, to that big CEO energy, and just had such a beautiful experience. We were also so close to the harbor that we would often go in the morning and like jump in and then have a coffee, and it was great. I had a lot of fun. And this takeaway from this chapter of my life is that one, life is truly amazing. And I felt the most in my mojo, the most aligned when I was living and working with people who aligned with my values, who just filled me with that purpose and meaning, who shared my vision, who supported my ambition. The same was true in Nest. I remember sitting there and being like, I'm not an entrepreneur. Like, that's for you guys to do. I definitely have other roles. And multiple people were like, no, one day you're going to start your own company. That just a matter of time. Just you wait, Analisa. And I was like, no. But they were right. So again, people that were just, and they helped me negotiate. I would be shy in a negotiation and they'd be like, no, you need to negotiate harder, do bigger, do more. We believe in you. You can do more. And I don't think that can be underestimated when you really work with people who believe in you and who also fully see you and are just like, you have more to give. And that is why I say be around people who want you to thrive and really be careful. If you have people in your life right now who are just not in that supportive energy, you do not have to stay there. And we need to fill your cup up more with the people who do inspire you, who get it, who want you to thrive and to grow in the right direction. You do not have to do that alone. Everybody needs community. Then we begin another chapter because I worked at Dare to Mansion and then Singularity University for about 5 years. And I was very happy. And I was basically employee number one. So I grew really fast. I had a COO kind of role where I was doing a lot of operations. And I was very loved, very, very loved by both the people that were in the organization as well as the people who were living in our, not living, working in our co working space. But I started to feel the itch and I started to feel like, okay, maybe this isn't right for me anymore. Like maybe, I've been in the same job for 5 years. I've grown a lot. This is definitely home. I'm happy. And yet I feel like I need to do something else. Like, who am I in a different job? Who am I in a different context? What's possible? What's available for me? And I was intrigued. I'd been surrounded by all these entrepreneurs who are working on the cutting edge of technology. And I really wanted to try that. I was like, I've kind of been in the learning and education space. I've been in the community space. I've been in the speaking space. I've been doing events. But what would it look like if I were to actually work on a product and work on bringing a technology into the world? So I started formulating a new ask and started talking to people about it. And I was telling all these different entrepreneurs I knew and people that I met. And I said, I'm looking to work at a startup developing exponential technology, something like blockchain, AI, 3D printing, et cetera, et cetera. And I knew what was important to me is that I would continue to work in an environment that was internationally minded. Denmark is a small country that can be closed minded. And I had worked in a very international space that celebrates diversity. And I wanted that again. But I wanted it to be even more global, like really take it to the next level, have a job that would take me different places and stuff like that. So I knew I wanted international. I knew I wanted to be paid well. Like I really wanted to make more money. I wanted to learn about a technology or that was a different edge for me. And I wanted to be in a place where I could contribute. So that was what I had. That's what I knew. And it wasn't more than that. But I started talking to people, and I had a friend who was like, you should come work at the startup I'm at. Like, we can definitely help with all those things. And it was a blockchain company that was between Berlin, Israel, and Copenhagen. And I was like, that sounds good. So I went ahead and I negotiated a great position. I got like a 30% increase on my salary. I was super proud of that negotiation. And I was like, this is exactly what I was looking for. I got exactly what I asked for. And I was working at the Copenhagen FinTech Lab, which had a very cool view of the canals, and you could take the boat out. And it was just like a very nice place to be. And then I also got offered to go to live in Tel Aviv for a month because we were launching an ICO, an initial coin offering to fundraise. And I went into the blockchain world really at the height of one of the bubbles. And I say one of the bubbles is because there's been multiple bubbles. But this was really like the heyday when everyone was getting really rich off of doing ICOs, whether or not there was a real company. And it was also an extremely male dominated world. And initially, I'd been super attracted to blockchain because I loved the idea that you had developers working all over the world on this open source technology and coming together for this greater good. And it was like, I'm an optimist. So I had like a very optimistic story about it. And then I got in the world and I was like, oh my, these people are not values aligned with me. This is not actually what's happening here. And it was also one of these moments where if you've worked in a hype cycle or in an environment where it's a lot of talk but no doing, then you start to develop the bullshit detector. But I kept feeling like we're talking a lot about doing the thing, but we're not doing the thing. So when are we actually creating the impact? Or where are we really on the journey? Are we just selling a vision of what we think will be true one day? Or can we even achieve this? Like doubts started coming up. And I started to get really disenchanted by this experience. I also felt really lonely. When I was living in Israel for a month, it was very beautiful, very cool. I got to go to Palestine. I got to visit Jerusalem. I got to do a lot of amazing things. But I was basically by myself for a month in a foreign country without community, without a support system. I wasn't really connecting with my colleagues. It was very, very difficult. And that again stressed for me how important it is to be in a place where vision and values alignment exists and to also stay away from the hype. So just because everyone else is doing it and saying it's cool doesn't mean it's actually cool or that you need to be doing it. And that was the same I felt when I was in university. of just not really listening to my own voice and what I wanted, but feeling like I need to do what everyone else is doing because that's going to make me cool. That doesn't work. So this solved itself pretty fast. So I'd made this big leap to go work for this different company. I was there about 6 months. And then essentially overnight, we lost all of our funding and I got fired. And I remember picking up the phone and just being like, I laughed. I remember picked up the phone, I got the news, I hung up. I was like walking down the street with my bike again. And I laughed and I was like, okay, well, that's that. And I had no idea what to do next. I had left this job that I actually loved and I was happy with, and I was, it was great to do this plan, this next thing. And I didn't have a plan B. I'd just gotten started. I was just learning. And I really was in it. Like I went on unemployment then. And I remember just first, I didn't know what to do. And then I started to make a plan, but I definitely sat with it a little bit, being unemployed and just being uncertain. Because it was also, it's always a hit to the ego. I knew it wasn't my fault. I didn't do anything bad, but I was like, I never thought I'd be unemployed. Like, what? How did this happen to me? So after that, I decided to make a list. And I made a list of all the jobs that I would love to have in this lifetime. So anything that I could think of, I wrote down. And I had already done one, which was work for a startup on the front lines of emerging technology. And then I wrote, I would love to try doing development work in Africa. So what would it look like if I was living in a foreign country where I could really help to launch a new technology, help the development of society, do some kind of more social impact work living abroad? I also was interested in venture capitalism. I'd been surrounded by people working in that space, and I was like, I could definitely be an investor. Like I can do this job, no problem. Same with corporate innovation. I'd been around a lot of different large corporate innovation units that would come and work with us through Singularity University. And I'd work with them on a couple different projects. They'd been part of our accelerator program. And I was also very intrigued by like, okay, what would it be like to work in corporate innovation and spearhead those relationships, spearhead the business, spearhead the strategies, spearhead the investments, et cetera, et cetera. And I was very interested too in philanthropy. So I still have all these dreams. So I say them, but you'll hear the rest of the story in a second. And you can hear how excited I get even talking about it, that it was so awesome just to write down a list of like, okay, I feel like I have no opportunities, but actually here's all the things I want to do in life, and life is long. There's potential to do them all. But like, what would I want to do if I had total freedom? What would that look like? And philanthropy has been a big one too. Particularly when I write that, I'm thinking of having a large sum of money that I get to distribute, and I get to decide where does it go, or work with people where we're the ones that are controlling the flow of capital. Because I've worked in multiple situations where someone else was controlling the flow of capital. But I think that would be an amazing opportunity to have, to be in that position. So I made a new ask, and my ask now was, I want to work at a startup that is bringing emerging tech to developing markets. So I started with that idea of going to Africa or somewhere else. And I happen to know a few different entrepreneurs that were in that space. So not coming in with I came in with the assumption, and this is important, of I want to learn if this is right for me. I want to learn because I just had this experience of thinking working on emerging tech in something really hot and cool that was getting press every day was going to be amazing and be like so innovative and take me to the next level, only to realize that it was an industry filled with a lot of bullshit. And I didn't want to make that mistake again. So I wanted to dip my toe in the water to see, am I fantasizing the idea of this? Like, is it just something I've kind of seen in the movies and I've idealized and thought this would be really cool? Or is it actually what I want to do? And what does that job really look like? So when I made the list, I was inspired by a degree I had read about in the US that was called the experience year, where instead of going to a university where you like study books, you actually put together 3 different internship experiences where you get to learn through doing. And I was like, that just makes so much sense if you want to do business or anything else. Like you really have to try working with the people, try doing the job, because half the time what's advertised is not actually what you're going to do. So this was my way of being like, all right, how do I hedge that risk? I'm going to go ahead and actually see what this is like, see if I want to do it, and then we'll take it from there. So I asked my friends who are working on different forms of emerging tech in Africa, and one of them said, yeah, you can come do an internship for me. I'm about to head to Kenya and Malawi for a month. Do you want to come? And I said, yeah, I'd love to come and shadow you as the CEO and help wherever I can. And like, I was going to do some work around OKRs, objectives, and key results. But we basically negotiated a position that I could do to give it a shot. And then we went to Africa. So this is us in Malawi, where they were installing solar energy batteries in different rural towns. And it was just amazing, like to actually go out in the field and to see how technology was being implemented, to see what was possible. This is where you'd get to see them making their sales pitch. So they would talk to whole communities, and basically you'd have to convince the men in the community that this is what they should spend their money on and that they should invest in. And then also we did a lot of different safaring. We went to a cool music festival. It was a lot of fun. And I was living a dream. Like there is no doubt about it that this was an incredible, incredible experience. But I also felt at the end of it that it wasn't my dream. I walked away being like, this was so cool. I can totally see what this life would be like. And it's not my life. It's not what I want to do. I don't want to move to another country and do this work, which was such a valuable experience. I had to try, I had to take the risk to have the clarity and be like, okay, I will have no regrets choosing a different direction. This is no longer my dream. And I stress that because a lot of times my clients will come to me and they'll have a certain dream. It might be that they want to move a certain place, move, like work at a certain company, only to realize that that's not actually what they wanted. And this happens, one, because we get the dream in our heads, but two, we can place a lot of value on a certain thing when it's not really about the thing, it's about something deeper, it's about something else. And I like to say the same deal here, that it's not that you worked at XYZ prestigious company, it's the what you learned or what you can apply, it's what you can do. So that really helped to shift my perspective. I was able to be like, okay, what did I really like about this experience? What do I want to take with me? But what do I want to let go of? Or why is this not for me? What can I learn from that? How can I move forward? And then I just kept going down my list. So I was like, all right, development work in Africa, not for me. So what about any of these other ones? Like, how can I find positions in that space? And this was also at a time where the Copenhagen food scene was very up and coming. And I was starting to have more money being someone as a working person. And my friends were also getting into fine dining and started having nice experiences. So we were going out to dinner at Noma and we were trying these different like gastronomy experiences and just kind of being in the center of everything that was unfolding. And I also was personally in my private life getting more passionate about cooking. And I got really I just started feeling like, okay, food's kind of interesting. Like what should I, maybe I could do something there. So really all that was following a thread of what am I excited about right now? Like if I really dumb it down, I was just sitting there being like, what kind of lights me up? What excites me? What would I like to do more of? Where do I want to spend my time? And that was enough to then chase that thread and follow it and say, okay, where does that lead me? And I was talking about this to everyone. So I was like, yeah, this really didn't work out. And I don't know about this, but maybe food, like I really like food. I'm thinking that could be a good space. I probably make it seem like I had a lot more calculated plan, but I just followed the what am I passionate about? Um, oh, and this is not exactly where we are in the story. So my ask at this time and what it should say is I want to work on food. And I also remember at that time realizing that food was the more I still knew, and this goes back to like being as a kid, I knew I wanted to make a difference. And I was really at this point feeling disenchanted by technology in general because I'd been working in the industry for about 7 years. And technology is super amazing as an enabler, but I was seeing so much emphasis being put on it as a fix all. And it's not. Like I really kept seeing that all these companies would get funding and they kind of burn out and it didn't really work because they were focused on the tech, but they weren't focused on the people and the society and the culture and the things that go with the technology for it really to work, for it really to be picked up and absorbed. So I was feeling like I need to look at this differently. And the more I was learning about food, the more things were clicking for me. I was like, this is not zero and ones. This is something super tangible. When I would try to explain to my grandma what blockchain is, she would not understand it. I don't even think I understood it. But this is something everyone understands. Everyone eats. It's just like a great connector. It's at the bottom of the pyramid of needs. Like, what is there not to love? And when I was revisiting the sustainable development goals, because I remember looking at this framework being like, where do I fit in? Which goals should I work on? Man, they're all really important. Like, how do you pick one? How do you just devote yourself to creating impact in only one of these areas? I felt totally overwhelmed by that. And I realized that by working on food, I could actually tackle all of them and I didn't have to choose, which was very in line with my self that wanted to do international business, international anywhere, business anything, food has really given me the same opportunity and satisfied my thirst of curiosity, another core value in terms of always being something more to learn, always being something else to go after, and always interconnected with something else. I really, really love that. So this was what I knew to be true. And I had a friend who was just like, well, Annalisa, I think you need to go check out this thing called the World Food Summit. And I was like, okay, what's that? And it was this event that was being held. And this was very soon after I came back from Africa, not that long after. But I remember it was like the night before I was sitting in Nest and I was telling some of the other people, like, oh, I think I want to work in food. And I'm just not really sure where to get started. I don't really know who to meet or where to plug in. I'm just, I'm a little bit at a loss around that. I just feel like that's a cool space. And somebody said, check out this World Food Summit. I Googled it and I found it was being held at Christiansborg, which is the parliament in Denmark. And it was a gathering of all these important politicians from across Europe and the world to talk about what's happening in food and the agricultural policy. And I was like, oh my gosh, yes, I love that idea. I want to be with these high power people. I want to understand what they're thinking. I want to learn more to figure out if this space is for me. I need to go to that event. Yes, I'm a yes to that. So it was the night before registration had already closed. And I was like, okay, how do I get in? Very Danish thing that you would actually put the number of an organization at the bottom, the footer of the website. So I went ahead and I called that number, and the woman in charge picked up and I said, I really want to come to the summit tomorrow. I just found out about it. Is there any way I can get in? And she said, yes, yes, no problem. Just come, just show up. And I was like, great. So bright and early the next day, I put on my best outfit and I went to the parliament and I confidently walked through the doors and I went through security. This is like showing up to the White House. You're just like walking in with the most confidence. And I got all the way to registration until they were like, you're not on the list. And I was like, no, 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 I'm definitely on the list. I talked to, I don't know, her name was Melina or something. I talked to Melina last night and she told me that it's no problem for me to come. And then they called this woman over and she was like, oh no, honey, I did not mean that you could come to the parliament with all the mucky mucks. I meant that you could go across town to the convention center where we are live streaming this with like the other commoners. Like, please leave. I was like, okay. But then I went to the event and I was like, fine, I can live with that. And the event was held at Bella Center, which is like a cool hotel in Copenhagen. And they had a big bite exhibition, which was all of these different startups that were gathered together and exhibiting their new products who were working on different aspects of the future of food. And I was just like, this is so cool. Like, I'm learning so much, meeting all these people. And we were listening to the different talks. I am someone that likes to talk a lot. I have a lot of opinions. And as I started going down the rabbit hole of the future of food and reading about the sustainable development goals and eating more and eating out more, I was starting to form my own opinions about the space. So when we would have a break in the programming, which is very focused on politics, we would then go out and have our coffee break and I would just talk to random strangers. That's the American in me, just like launching a conversation with anyone. And I started sharing my opinions and I was like, I think this about this. And, they really didn't make this point or something else. And as they rung the bell for us to go back inside, a woman came over to me and she was like, do you have a job? And I said, no, I'm like unemployed. I'm kind of trying to figure out what to do next. And she said, I think you should work for us. And I was floored. I was like, what? I was just being me and sharing my opinions. And that's enough that you want to offer me a job? Like, is this for real right now? And this woman ended up offering me my dream job. I was just like, this cannot be true right now. So she said, I work for a large food and beverage company that operates across Europe and in the Nordics, and we're launching a corporate venture capital arm based out of Stockholm. We're planning on expanding to Denmark. You seem to know a lot about the people here and what's going on and to be very connected to the ecosystem. Would you want to work as a consultant for us and basically map the ecosystem and help us to find some investment opportunities? And I said, yes. It was like an instant, seriously, that's a job? You want me to drink coffee with cool people and figure out if we should give them money? I would love to do that. That goes back to my hitting multiple of my boxes: corporate innovation, venture capitalism, and philanthropy in some aspects. So I was a huge, heck yes to this. I went home. I immediately started my own company to work as a consultant for them, work as a freelance consultant. And that launched an incredible experience as well. One of my favorite jobs I've had, working for Pink or Powleague. And I was also really loving the ability to work independently and autonomously. So I was on my own as like a satellite where I had a clear vision of like, this is what we need to do. I'd have to report back on it, but I basically got to go do my thing and organized. When I mapped the whole ecosystem, I took a lot of pre-meetings for them to basically figure out, is this an investment a good idea for them? Does it match their investment thesis and their strategic idea of what they want to do? And then we organized a trip for them to come to Copenhagen. It was like a 3-day whirlwind tour of meeting all the important stakeholders from the different university innovation labs to other funds that they could invest in to the startups that I thought were the coolest and the best fit that aligned with their vision and their values. And that ended up leading to an investment in Cafe Bueno, who has been on the podcast. They have also been on the podcast, but it was really amazing. And it was also truly an amazing experience to work in another place where I really felt seen. I felt so aligned with the people I was working with. I was really seen instantly for my gifts. Marika, my boss, had an incredible ability to just be like, I see you. I see what you're talented at. Let's create a position based on that so that you can just run and do it. And it was fabulous. So this also was at a time in my life where personally things were changing. And I worked for Pink for like a year and a half or so. And then there started to be just a few roadblocks, as there normally are within corporate venture capitalism and corporate innovation. Things were moving slower than I wanted. And as a consultant, I was like, I'm not sure if this is the right way to keep going. And I also had now been living in Denmark for about 10 years. And I was like, I'm starting to miss home. It took me a long time to reach that conclusion, but I was really missing my family. I was missing, American culture and different elements. So I ended up leaving Pink and really deciding that now I wanted to go move back to New York City. I kind of had this aha moment where I was like, everyone wants to live in New York and have the Sex and the City experience. I can so easily do that. Why am I not? Like, why am I not taking this experience and living there while I'm young and having a good time and all that stuff? And I really also wanted to have another startup experience where I was working for a big, established, successful startup who knew what they were doing, who were really backed by funding, and who could show me on another level. So, because I'd been working again in this high level position of organizing the ecosystem and putting people together, I forgot to mention that while I was at Pink, that was what launched me into starting the podcast in the beginning. So through that job, I was drinking coffee with cool people. And then I was just meeting so many different kinds of people. And I was really stunned by the fact that nobody was talking to each other. At the end of every conversation, I would just sit there and be like, so do you know so-and-so? And they'd be like, no. And I'd say, you guys are working on the same thing. Like, you have the same exact mission of what you want to do. You have to know each other. We have to collaborate if we're really trying to shift something in a different direction and do something else. So I was writing a lot of emails, and I realized very quickly that one, my time is a limited resource and I can only meet so many people, but it also takes a lot of time to write emails and make proper introductions. So I thought, how can I outsource myself? How can we get more people working on food and more people excited about this space, which I'm just falling more and more in love with by the day, I think is so amazing. And my answer to that was to start a podcast. So this was another moment in life where there was just so much clarity. I remember I had no fear, no doubt, no questions. I just went on YouTube and I Googled how to start a podcast, and then I started it. That was it. I didn't think twice. I reviewed the first person I could think of, and that has now led me to over 100 episodes in a show that's in one of the top shows downloaded, which is great. But it was just a very clear calling that that's what I wanted to do. And so I was continuing to do the podcast at this time. And then I was clear I wanted to move back to America. That was like the first and foremost thing. I specifically wanted a job in New York City, and I wanted to work for a big venture-backed company where I felt like they had it going on. I had a download moment where I was out listening to a podcast, and the interview I heard, I just was like, I need to work for that company. I don't care what it's going to take. I'm going to work for that company. I was so inspired by what they were talking about, their vision, how they were thinking. So I applied and I got into work at Grow Intelligence. And I say I got into work there because it was like getting into Harvard or something else. It was hard. Like, there were so many applicants. A lot of people wanted to work for them. It was very competitive. And I took a role that was less than what I was making. So it was a few steps back, but to me, it made perfect sense because I really wanted to work there. I just knew that was going to be the thing for me. And it fulfilled all my other check marks. And here I was in New York City. My first day of work was basically 2 weeks before the pandemic. I went into the office. I was like, oh my gosh, here's the beginning of a whole new chapter. And then we went into the pandemic. That was really hard. I also felt that this was after a bit of time, not my place. So, one, going down in a position was not the right choice for me. I was working on a lot of jobs where I was like, this is not worth my time. This is not what I'm good at. I'm not using my gifts. I didn't feel heard. So it wasn't really an environment where you could voice diversity of opinion. You kind of had to just do what you were told. There was a lot of confusion around the vision and what they were creating. There wasn't total product market fit. Like there was just a variety of things where it was very difficult. And we were a very small team. So my check mark of wanting to work in a well-established team that knew what they were doing so that I could learn and soak up all that knowledge wasn't really being fulfilled. So I was not happy. I mean, again, it was also the pandemic. So add on that layer of just like life is tough. I spent a lot of time bird watching. That was my main hobby. Got to watch the birds every day and take the same walk. And I moved back in with my family at this point. I really didn't realize how much I had missed my family and missed the community of my family until I moved back. And I'm so proud of myself now for the amount of time I lived abroad, for all that I accomplished while I was living abroad. But it was such a huge exhale to move home and to be back in my home culture and just be with my family. So this was a turning point in my career because it's like my priorities shifted where I'd been in an energy of going out in the world, experiencing all that I can, doing all I can, traveling all the places I can, et cetera, et cetera. It became very clear to me that I want to be in a place again where I feel supported, where I feel surrounded by community. And I got that living with my family and being in close proximity to them. So I was starting to look for an out in terms of being like, I'm just not happy at work. I'm not showing up as my best self. I felt really miserable most days. I would kind of drag my feet, like, when you have a job and you don't want to do it, like that's the best way I can describe it. You're physically showing up, but you're not showing up with any energy of wanting to do the thing. That's how I felt about this. So I was very lucky that I got a inbound request from someone I knew who worked at Co-Created, which is a venture studio. So they do corporate innovation projects for companies where they help to build startups with those organizations. And then they also help them figure out partnership opportunities and investment opportunities. But it's a lot about how do we co-create together? How do we innovate together and build new amazing things that make sense for that organization to help them be disruptive? And I got offered to work a gig for IKEA. And I was like, this is amazing. It was a job. It was based on all the personal branding I had done and how I had come to be known that I was thought of for this position. And I was basically headhunted for it, saying, hey, we think you'd be amazing for this project. Would you want to come work with us? So I went back into the position of being a freelance consultant, and I went and worked for IKEA for about a year or two. And then, as it goes with consulting, the gig started to slowly die out. The project was coming to an end, and I made the classic business mistake of putting all my eggs in one basket. So I was like living in the good days of this project is going to last forever. And of course it doesn't. That's not how this, consulting works. That's why they say, don't put all your eggs in one basket. But I did. I put all my eggs in one basket. And I was like, oh, crap. Now I don't have a plan B. I just really liked what I was doing. I was enjoying it. I was having a great time and working on a project I was quite passionate about. And that left me again in a position of what now? What do I do? And this is basically a year ago, October 2022, that I was sitting there being like, I do not have a plan B. And I kept sitting with that and sitting with that and sitting with that. And then I was like, I think it's time to start my own business, which led us to where we are today. So on October 2nd, 2022, I announced actually that I was going to take the podcast global and rebrand from Nordic Food Tech to Future Food, which now is a big learning because actually it was a decision to go into building my own business, really commit to building my personal brand, commit to just bringing my talents to the world, and also a realization that I was definitely capable of doing this, but I didn't really believe in myself that I could. So there is no reason. I had done it already. I couldn't have my own corporate innovation clients, but I felt the need to have an intermediary. I wasn't confident in my ability to land those deals myself or get those. I wasn't 100% certain if I wanted to fully have a coaching practice. There's a lot of things where I had doubt on, is this really what I want to do? And as long as I was sitting in that doubt, I was swirling. Like I was just not able to get out of it. I was just, confused on what's the right way to go. And I also knew what that feeling of clarity feels like, what that feeling is when you have such a clear sense of where you want to go, what you want to do. There is no question. And I wanted it back. And I knew I could get it back. I know what it's like to have it. And that has been such because I've had that feeling, and I'm curious if you've ever had that feeling. I'd love to hear if you have. It's so useful because you know what it's like to go back to it. You know what it's like to go back to being in your mojo, to being in balance, to being in flow, to feeling like you have it all, like you've been there. So then it's just a matter of getting back there depending on where you are at in this stage of life, because it morphs. Like what it was is not what it's going to be today. We're changing in every moment. We're changing all the time. So whenever I had that confusion come up or that doubt around what to do next, I knew I had to sit back and be like, okay, my life is not working cohesively together. It's not actually what I want it to be. What is going on? I have to do some reflection work to figure this out and do some personal work. So, really, why I'm saying this is that this whole last year has been a huge learning in terms of really unearthing what is it that I want. And I have this in a few slides from now. But for me, really owning and stepping into entrepreneurship has been the biggest lesson in creating my career because I have had to answer to myself and no one else. And it has truly been like the greatest teacher in terms of really sitting with how do I design my days? What do I want to bring into this world? Who do I want to serve? What gifts do I have to offer? What do I want to be paid for? What do I want to be known for? Like the list goes on and on. And then actually getting in the flow of that, feeling enough, feeling deserving of it, knowing that it's true. There's been so much mindset work that's gone into this past year for me. And it's beautiful, but it's just been like a true lesson in what I've known to be true over these years, that you can always have whatever you want if you choose it, if you decide it, if you go after it, and if you know you absolutely can do it, like no doubts. As soon as there's a little bit of doubt or you're talking yourself down or you don't quite believe it's true, then it won't be true because you don't really believe it. So now I want to talk a little bit about my vision today, because this is what I'm currently building in this phase of truly creating my career in every single aspect. And while I will just read these bullet points and then jump into what that looks like. So, my vision for what I'm building now is to run a multi-million-dollar business that shifts the food system and to work with dream clients who are changing the future of food and helping them to become their best selves so that they can do their highest work. I love that because what I've realized more and more is that helping people get out of their own way to lift more people up, to help them step unapologetically into who they are and to live their best selves, to really bring their gifts to the world, is one of the best forms of facilitation for getting more people to make the shift into something bigger and greater. So this for me is like, oh, I love it. I love each and every one of my clients. They're all amazing, amazing, amazing. And they all have such passion and good hearts, and they know that they can do more and that they're ready to take that on, which is so beautiful to watch. I also would like to run a business that supports me in spending as much time as I want with my family and friends, and also to focus on my own personal health while making great money, not sacrificing on making money, and changing the world. I particularly think a lot these days about building a business that will enable me to be a mother, and to be a mother who can be there full time. I do not have babies yet, but I do plan for that someday. And I want to have a business that fully supports me in being a great mom so that I do not have to choose between my work and my family. And I know that is possible. And that's already the thing I'm planting seeds for now. I also want to be known as the Oprah of food. I will be the Oprah of food. And I will receive invitations to travel the world, to experience different cultures, to learn about different food systems and meet amazing people. And I will be an industry power broker. So by that, I mean maintaining a strong network that enables me to open doors and make things happen. A little bit when I describe that philanthropy energy, I want to be the power broker that holds the purse strings or the Rolodex, that if I make a call, people know that's like what Annalisa's word is good. If she says it should happen, it should happen. And then it just goes. And we've all met those people who have that power where if they say something, it's like, okay, it's going to happen. That is ultimately what I'm working towards each and every day when I'm working on my business and building my business. These are the things that I aspire to and I know are possible for me. I have no doubt that these things are possible for me. And why I know they're possible for me is that I'm already living it now. So instead of waiting for my vision to happen, and watch yourself if you say this, I hear this a lot with my clients. I heard this the other day with one of my best friends. She said, I really want this nice purse, this handbag, but that's only a handbag a partner would have. And I had to look at her and go, you should have that handbag now because then you're in the energy of being the partner. You're attracting the thing that you want. It's coming towards you. You're not saying, I can only have this when. I can only allow myself this happiness when. I can only invest in myself at this point when. Because then it's always this thing that's a little out of reach. We're not letting ourselves have it versus really stepping into that energy that it's already true. You are already a partner in the business. You already have what you want. It is already happening. It's already yours. So, what I know is already mine is really owning that I'm an ecosystem developer. I really struggled for quite some time in my journey, and I didn't cover that so much today to name who am I and what I do. How do I describe it? How do I find my voice? And I find that people kind of know what an ecosystem developer is, but almost always I have to explain it. And it's not really a job that's paid for totally. It's hard to get paid to be a connector. And I don't think it'll always be true. I think people are waking up more and more to the value of the person that's able to talk across the aisle or able to say, even within an organization, you have parts of the company that don't talk to each other. So you need that person who goes and talks to everyone so that they can connect the dots and make things happen. We need those brokers within any ecosystem. So it's one has been a process of really owning that's what I do. And what I do in my business today is I continue to work with corporate innovation clients. So I'll be an advisor to them, helping them to develop their investment thesis and then connect to the ecosystem. I'll help them vet their deals so that I'll be like the first line of I'll be the first line of contact, kind of like the gatekeeper of having that first meeting to see is it really worth their time. And also always operating from this place of talking about vision and values. Do you share the same vision for the future of the food system? Do you share the same values of how to work together and move through this world and make decisions? That's ultimately what a great business relationship is based on. And I know that I've seen that so many times of what created success versus what broke down very quickly in the process, no matter how much money was involved. I'm also doing a lot of work around regenerative agriculture these days. And then I coach different startup executives and startup founders and individuals who are all in some kind of way creating their career. If you're an entrepreneur working in a startup, you are shaping your job every day because you're building an organization that doesn't exist yet. Like you're setting the rules, you're creating it. Same, all of us have the power to create our own careers and decide, here's what I want to do. So, how do I then find a job that allows me to do that? That's really the game that we're playing and what we're working on attracting. So I do that and I do the podcast and I do speaking and I work with a variety of different accelerator programs, also coaching their founders, helping them to attract the right investment. And I showed the photo in the beginning of me being a rock star and speaking on stages. And I increasingly recognize that I'm still a rock star today, rock star in the food world. And I love that I've been able to embrace that side of myself and bring it forward and really step into this idea of being the Oprah of food, being someone that has a voice and something to say, something to share, a platform, building a following. I also wrote that I want invitations to see the world, learn from the world, learn from different ecosystems. I experience that so much now, both through the podcast, which has exposed me to different worlds and take me down different rabbit holes, but also by getting to visit different ecosystems, whether that's on behalf of an innovation client who invites me to go to a different ecosystem to figure out how do we connect with them, or I decide to go because I want to learn about that culture and I want to figure out how can we plug in. I do see a big part of my role as being someone that operates on the global and international level and is able to know who the key nodes are in different ecosystems because our food system is one big system. So it's small, a lot of small systems that connect to a big system. And having that network, knowing people in different places, understanding the nuances really goes a long way when it comes to opening doors and making things happen and getting deal flow and lots of different things. So, just a few experiences I've had. I just got back, for example, from going to the Basque Culinary Center and then doing a bit of a learning road trip and vacation throughout northern Spain, where I learned a lot about what the food culture looks like there, a very rich food culture. I've done everything from wild foraging to seaweed foraging to going to Mallorca and learning about the culture there. I went to Colombia, I've been to Greenland, and consistently just saying yes to experiences where they involve food, but they also involve meeting different communities, different producers that are on the edge or seeing things from a different way and understanding how things are being built there. What's also important to me and what I live now is like one, having fun and enjoyment. So working in food is an amazing place to be. There's a lot of perks, including good food and good experiences and going out for fine dining and indulging in it, but also meeting amazing chefs, other inspiring people. And I consistently meet amazing people through the podcast who are ever expanding my network, but teaching me something new. And that really resonates with my value of curiosity and being able to fire that. I also know that today, the biggest thing when I was creating my career is really striving for more balance. So I would say I used to be very driven by work, and I would do like I would always stay late or do something like that at work. And really living in the Nordics helped me a lot to be like, I can get a lot done working from 9 to 4. And now I'm in the era of being like, I could just work 3 hours today and I could achieve a lot. And that's more than enough as long as I'm good with it. So it's a lot more like I set what is the level of output and not that it has to be I sit at a desk for 8 hours. That's not necessarily even where I do my best work. So, what has been important for me now as I look at creating my career is not just analyzing what's important for me in a job and reflecting on that and writing it down and capturing it, but also writing down what's important to me in my personal life. What would make me fulfilled at home with my friends? What matters to me in terms of saying I lived a good life and really being able to show up as my full self. A big part of that is getting to experience being a digital nomad. I shy away from that term because I'm not trying to live in communities all around the world full time. But I know that I have lived in Denmark for 10 years. And it's half of who I am. And it's where a lot of my community is. And I felt very heartbroken when I chose to leave Denmark because I was choosing to leave a big part of myself. I was like breaking up with this country. And it has taken me time to rebuild a new relationship with Denmark. But it used to be that Denmark was my home base. And from there, I'd get to travel the world. Now New York's my home base and I'm able to go back to Denmark, but I really wanted a career where I didn't feel I had to choose between one or the other. So finding work that's been able to bring me back to Denmark or keeps me engaged with the community has been like the thing that has made me the most happy. And then we also spend a lot of time in Mexico. We have a house there. My parents bought their retirement home there. So that has been a beautiful thing to be a tri-continental citizen, not continental, but to be living across 3 places and really call 3 places home and have community there and meet people and not feel like I have to choose just one place. That it is totally possible for me to have it all from that point of view because it was really breaking my heart to have to just choose one. And now we get a little bit into the key takeaway portion. And I think one of the big things, this goes back into choosing who you want to be, is that I did not see myself as an entrepreneur until I did. And you heard this in my story. It started when I was a kid selling seashells and lemonade on the sidewalk, to then starting an organization at the Copenhagen Business School, to then actually working as a freelance consultant for many, many years up until now. But it was only a year ago that I embraced and understood that I am an entrepreneur, that I can do this, and I claim it, and I'm going to build a company. I was totally doubting myself. I was doubting it. I was standing in my own way, and I was not really allowing myself to have it. So, this has been one of the biggest growth things. And while for you, it might not be entrepreneurship, it's something else. So, what is true about you? What has maybe always been true about you, but that you're resisting claiming and owning as part of who you are and part of your true identity and how people might already be seeing you, but you're not seeing yourself. And there's a lot of work to be done there, but that was been a huge thing for me, is just really stepping into unapologetically owning who I am. And the second thing is I wanted to show you a variety of asks I've had over the years in terms of what a vision means, what a vision looks like, because with my clients, we can do super detailed visioning work and getting into what exactly you want, what exactly it looks like. But it can also be as simple as I want to work in this industry or I am meant for this. The biggest difference I see between people getting what they want and moving into that is really spending time getting clear on what you want and owning it unapologetically. You maybe even heard today when you were listening to my story, the points where I was so excited and so clear and just knew something was made for me and that I was meant to have it and there was no doubt, versus when I was like, yeah, and then I want this and then a little bit then, and then there's just a different energy to it. There's different things there. So spending time on getting clear about what is yours and having no doubts and really knowing it's already true is going to be the thing that's going to help you the most. And you can make a decision right here, right now, of what you want to go after, what you want. Try it. And if you hate it, you can change your mind. That is one of the most liberating things, to know that you are not stuck. You can choose a different scenario any moment. And I encourage you to make your list of all the things you'd like to try so that you feel you have options and that you're not locked in, because we are going to live forever. I mean, come on, the singularity, just kidding. But we're going to live a long time. So you can go ahead and have multiple careers ahead of you and not feel like you just have to choose one thing and wrap your whole identity into that. You do not have to do that. The other thing is, I talk a lot about this idea of the zone of genius, and I also will use the term red thread. And by that, I mean, what are the things that you're amazing at and that you know you're amazing at? Like maybe you're not totally owning it right now, but you know you're really good at it. Like this is what people are really hiring you for. This is where you shine. This is where you always get A plus 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 plus. Um, One of the biggest learnings for me along the way, like I am not great at math and science. It has never been my forte, but I spent thousands of dollars. My family spent thousands of dollars on math tutors for me growing up until I really just owned the fact that like I am never going to be a math person. This is not my thing. So I'm spending all this time and energy on a deficit of mine that doesn't make me happy to be more well-rounded, to be perfect. And when I dropped that and just started spending more time on energy on growing the parts of me that I love, that I'm good at, that I want to feed, that bring me joy, everything shifted. Everything became easier because I felt more whole. So when I talk about zone of genius, it's very much from this place of like, what are the things that you're really good at that we should keep feeding and keep growing? And then stop paying so much attention to what you're bad at and trying to fix yourself. We can always have growth areas and personal development areas, but I mean, really investing in like basing your career around something that's just not you. So for me, what I've learned as my zones of genius, it's ecosystem and community development, facilitation, business development, marketing, communication, speaking, writing, interviewing, and coaching. And if I look back even to when I was a kid, I was doing some aspect of all of these the whole time. They took on different faces and forms, but if I were to zoom out, that would be true. And this is something I have to untangle with people when they have it stuck in their head that their identity is an accountant, for example. Your identity is not an accountant. That's a job. There is something else you do that's what you really love to do. Maybe it's working with numbers to solve problems. If we put it in that frame, now I can think of a million and one jobs where that skill is needed. Your ability to solve problems with numbers is needed. It opens up the universe and opens up the world to give you more options versus being stuck on the only thing I can do is being an accountant. That's small, that's narrow. We want to get into a space of expansion and allow different ideas and different things to come to us. The other thing is that I reinvented the what and not the how. So I understood that I can do any of these things. You could hire me to do any of these things. I do best when it's a combination of all of these things, and I'm able to do that and able to show up as my whole self. That also resonates with my values and, jiving with the culture and this and that. But this has enabled me to create a red thread that I'm able to translate what I do to any workplace. So I could probably pitch myself for just about any job and be able to confidently say, yes, I can do that because I know I can do all these things. So it's just a matter of, do I really believe in whatever problem they're solving, that I want to apply myself to that and give my time and my energy to that. So that's when we talk about zones of genius, what we're talking about. And then within this, and when you do this work, again, it does not happen overnight, but really the work is owning and loving who you are unapologetically and know that you are worth it, that you can find a job or a career that really resonates with what you love to do, that uses all your skills, that enables you to travel the world or share it with the world, that enables you to be with your family. Like if you are in a space right now of thinking, I cannot have it all, or if there's something that you're not allowing yourself to have, again, let's work together because there's a story you're telling yourself of why it's not possible. It is totally possible to make a difference and make money. It's totally possible to be a great parent and have a great career. It is totally possible to what's one I've also been. Oh, yeah, there's many of them. I could also probably think of a long list of my own. I have one. Okay, for me right now, the one I've been having to untangle is I can't build a company and find the love of my life, or I can't have a relationship and build a company. That's a story I'm telling myself that's not true, but it's a place where I'm holding myself back from, in this case, love versus allowing myself the abundance of having it all. So it's a personal work I've been doing. The work never ends, but really checking ourselves on our stories in terms of where are we not allowing ourselves to have what we want? Where are we not fully showing up? Where are we not just being us? Like, where are we hiding in the workplace? I remember multiple experiences where I felt like I would go to work and be one person and come home and be someone else. And I actually would tell people for a long time, like, I don't want people at work to know the full me. That's like, I like to keep a private life private and they don't know me in that regard. But that meant that I was dimming my light and I was not fully being me and fully showing up as who I am. And now I've moved away from it because if I don't feel comfortable to fully be who I am, then there's something off in that dynamic. There's something going on. So there's been a lot of work there for me to fully own, like, what's holding me back from being me? Why do I feel like that's not safe? Why do I feel like I need two separate parts of me or to keep that level of separation? The last thing I wanted to talk about is a framework to kind of wrap this all up in. It's simple, but it's a good mantra to stick with yourself as you move through the world following this, which is a simple phrase of ask, allow, believe, humbly receive. What do we mean when we say this? Ask. You saw me making my clear ask throughout the presentation. Ask for what you want, whatever that is. Don't be afraid to ask for it. Allow is getting out of your own way and allowing it to happen. So don't self sabotage. Believe that it's already yours. Believe that it's true. Believe that it can happen for you. Believe that it is happening for you. And then humbly receive is allowing it to come into your life. So again, not setting up roadblocks, not feeling guilty or undeserving or anything else where you're not enabling yourself to have what you really want, where you don't feel deserving of that. If you can take yourself through this time and time again, then it will help you to untangle, where am I getting in my own way? Where am I not allowing myself to create my career and create what I really want in this life? And if you're sitting there going like, this is amazing, I want it all. Yes, you can have it all. And I would like to help you have it all. And I wanted to talk a little bit more about what the Creating Your Career coaching program is. I know some of you watching this are already in it, which I love. And thank you for saying yes. Thank you for making this investment in yourself and taking the steps to go for it. I'm so proud of you. And I'm so excited to be walking with you on this journey. And what we do in the Creating Your Career program, it's 8 different sessions. Normally it takes us about 6 months to go through 8 sessions. And we start by distilling your values. So step 1 is figuring out what matters to you, what's important to you. What is it that you really want in this life? Because from there we can design a vision that honors it. And values also matter because they're a very good tool for decision making and helping us realize what makes us feel in alignment. So I mentioned before my values: curiosity, leadership, community, and communication. So if I don't have those 4, then I like something's off and I can tell I'm not quite happy or something's going on. And I know that's what I need to look for and filter for when I'm interviewing for jobs or even interviewing clients. I'm like, does this feel in alignment with what makes sense for me? It's also just a way to move throughout your day and help you figure out, does this create more joy in my life or is this going to be an energy suck in some other capacity? Once you have an understanding of your values and you've done the work to distill those, we then get into defining your vision. So that's looking into, who are you becoming? What are you creating? What are all the desires you have? And how can we map them out? Like, let's not hold anything back. Let's fully own what we want out of this life. And then look at, what is it that we need to change? What behavior do we need to change? What stories do we need to change in order to really have that vision? To whether that means starting your own company, changing jobs, moving into a different position in your current organization, or just building your personal brand. Sometimes people want to work with me on that in terms of saying, I really want to be known for this. What would it take for that to be true so that you can attract different opportunities than maybe what's in front of you right now? In terms of who this is for, I still like that idea that you are definitely someone who, life is good. Again, a lot of my clients, they're doing amazing at where they are and what is happening in their lives. They have a lot of good things in place, but there's that feeling that something's missing. And there's this feeling that they have more to give. There's more to step into. They're not quite fulfilled. There's not quite enough meaning, but there's a lot of power. And there's just a clear entrepreneurial sense of like, I know I can do this and I need help in making it happen. So I say this is for you if you want to serve and share your gifts with the world, if you know you were made for more, if you know that you want more balance in your life, maybe like you're doing the things that you really like, you're serving who you want to serve, but you are doing too much work and then not having enough personal life. That's also a typical situation, that finding the balance between the two. Maybe you want to start a company. You're sitting on the fence of that, whether it's being a consultant and a freelancer or actually starting a full company. I've worked with both. We can do work around that, or we can just do work around building your personal brand. So I think that's always a very good place if you're thinking about changing jobs 2 to 3 years from now, starting to build a personal brand, starting to build a network, then that will help to make it easier for you later down the road. And we can get into that as well. So now we will get into questions. All right, questions. So I loved this question. I loved all the questions, actually. They were really good questions. The first question is, are you 30%, 50%, 90%, or 99% there in terms of where you want to be career-wise? And I'm glad I got this question ahead of time because I sat with it a little bit. And I think my conclusion on this is that I have never been happier because I know in every moment I am choosing what I want and I am stepping more into who I am becoming and what I want in this world. So, as I shared, there are aspects of my vision and my career that I'm already living. And I have to remember that. I have to sit in the gratitude of like, there's so many things that are already working out for me that I'm just pinching myself over. Like, how can this be true? This is so amazing. I also don't think I'm totally there because I know I will continue evolve and change and I need to change my vision with that, but there's also other things I want to accomplish, things I want to do, things I want to try. And that can be enough when I think of career more holistically of saying like I still have this list of all the different jobs I want to try at one point or another, roles I want to have. So for now I'm on this thing, but then maybe it'll be something else and giving myself the freedom to change. So I found a lot of comfort. I'm going to put myself at the 90% mark. Like I've definitely gotten to a point where if I'm not in alignment with my career, I can pretty quickly feel it. And then I'm comfortable changing to something else and being like, this isn't it. I thought it was it. It's not it. That's cool. I can move on. And at the same time, knowing I want to build towards something more because that building aspect makes me excited. It's something to work towards. So that's what I would say. But I really felt at the times where I didn't feel I was happy, like I was where I was at a 20%, were definitely when I didn't have clarity. I didn't feel I was working with people who align with my values. I was really just like easily annoyed by what was going on. And I really didn't believe in what we were working on as an organization. So realigning with those things and to realign with those things, I had to do the work of figuring out like what is my vision or what are the visions I believe in? What is the world I want to work towards? What are my values that make and how can I communicate around them? So when something breaks down, I can also tell people like, why this upset me is so and so reason, or this is what I am looking for, as opposed to just complaining. Stop complaining. If you're just complaining, that's not very helpful. You're never going to go anywhere from that point of view. So I hope that answers the question. Next question is, at what point did you start realizing that you are going towards where you wanted to be? Or were you going with the flow, trusting your present decisions will lead you somewhere? I'm curious to what extent you were dealing with uncertainty and how did you navigate it, what you've learned. So I feel this might have kind of been answered by my story and just adding some more nuance to that, where I definitely trusted my intuition in moments where I would call them downloads. Like I got a clear feeling of a message or a clear sense, this is what I need to do now. It's actually a big part of my business today where I allow myself to sit in quiet or go for a walk or do something where it's just like a great idea can come. And then I'm like, okay, I trust that idea and I go with that as opposed to questioning it. Is it a good idea? So the moments where I felt the most in flow were when I listened to those ideas and I didn't question them. When I then was like, but I don't know, but da, 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 that added a lot more stress. And there had definitely been moments where I was totally uncertain about what to do. And the only thing to do was to sit in it and to really try different things to feel what actually feels good and take it from there. But I think the moment I love this question. At what point did you start realizing that you were going towards where you wanted to be? In the beginning, because I was young and I didn't know better, I didn't totally appreciate where I was and how much I was learning, and that was building towards who I am becoming. And I can really see how every chapter of my career so far has made me better and enabled me for what's next. Like I really do see and feel that and understand how it's taught me the good and the bad, have taught me different things that have helped me to get more of what I want and do more of what I want and be confident about that and not feel like I can't do it. So I think now there's a lot more awareness, which has helped me to feel like I'm more on the path. But there is a lot of trust that if I set that ask, it's going to come for me. It's going to happen. I do not have any doubts. This is possible for me. So sitting and doing that mindset work as well is key. What concrete exercises did you do to find your values? How do you use them daily, weekly, monthly? To make in taking decisions, and how often do you recalibrate them? So This is another really good question, and I'm not going to answer it totally now, but I will do another masterclass on this. And this is something that we really get into in the Creating Your Career program because we have a whole big like exercise that we do around distilling your values. That's a really core fundament of the program. So there are exercises you can do basically to help you find them. And in terms of how I check in on them, then that would be like technically all the time. I forget, but it's often that I'm so clear on them that I'm like, I live the work I do and the even the skills I've chosen align with my values. So if I take curiosity as an example, podcasting is a curious endeavor. I get to ask people questions. Doing investment is actually a very curious endeavor because you have to figure out about a company and learn more about them to figure out if you want to invest in them. Coaching, very curious endeavor. You get to ask a lot of questions. I was born, my parents nicknamed me Curious George when I was born because I basically came out and looked around and wanted to learn everything about the world. So for me, the activities, the skills I'm doing my day to day, the gifts I bring are in line with my values that I'm very much living it every day, which creates a feeling of purpose. But then when I'm in doubt, I will sit with my values and be like, all right, so here's this decision I have to make. If I go from the place of honoring my value of curiosity, what would I do? And that can just be a helpful way to think about what's the best choice for me, what would make me feel good and go. I spoke with a client the other day who was asking me, do your values change over time? And my opinion on that is that your core values don't really change. I think they're core for a reason, but the prioritization of them will change, as will the definition underneath, because every day we are growing and we are getting smarter and we're learning more. So with that, we're able to actually get sharper on our definition or change into what it would be. So how I would define curiosity 15 years ago is maybe different than I am now as a 31-year-old woman. That just looks different. So that would be my answer to that. How do you navigate big pivotal moments in your career, especially if you're unsure about what you could do and create or what you're passionate about? So, great question. And I think the way to start here is getting into what you're passionate about, because this is owning what you're passionate about. And I have no doubt, that there are things that you are passionate about. Maybe it's not work or solving a specific problem. Sometimes my clients come and they're like, oh, but you want to work on food, and I don't know what I want to work on. And you don't have to start with a big problem. Your passion can also be something in your personal life. It could be something like, I'm really passionate about getting to have slow mornings and meditate and me time, or I'm really passionate about my family and getting to spend time with them, and that's really important to me in my career, or that's a big one for mine. Or it might be something else. Like, it doesn't necessarily have to be a work thing, but starting with whatever you are passionate about in your life right now is good. The same with looking at what would you like to grow more of. So maybe there's a thing where you're just feeling a little bit of passion. Like in my story, you could also hear there were moments where I was like, I don't know if I'm fully passionate about this yet, but I think it's interesting and I want to learn more about it. Like, I'm curious about it. And that was enough of a pull, and it fed a deeper passion that grew, or I figured out I wasn't passionate about it and I walked away. So I think chasing that and just sitting with, like, there's definitely things you're passionate about now. Just be honest about what they are and own it. And when it comes to navigating big pivotal moments, I mean, there's many reasons something can feel big and pivotal. I think the biggest pivotal moments I experienced were the ones, I would probably say it was when I lost my job because I didn't have a plan. And the other moments I felt a lot more agency. And in that one, I really felt like knocked on my butt. And I didn't, it took me time. Like, really, it just took me time to get back in the saddle and figure it out. So I think the takeaway from that is to have patience and allow it to unfold, but to never start doubting that to never stop doubting that you are worth it, that you will create a career that you love, that is available to you and that is happening for you. And the answer will reveal itself if you sit with it and let it. And even that awareness that if you're not happy with whatever's going on right now, well, own that. Own that you're not in the right place and that you want something different. And then we start doing the work to figure out what is that different thing. And I have a bunch of exercises for this too. So there's similar paces you can put yourself through. I do want to stress that none of this happens overnight. So it takes time. It takes time to make a shift. It takes time to make a pivot. It's like steering the Titanic of our lives, but there's no doubt that there's not going to be a crash. That's a bad metaphor. That's a bad metaphor. It's like steering a big ship. Like it takes some time to turn it. That is what I'm trying to say. All right. On that note, thank you so much for today. And I am so grateful if you have stayed until the end of this and listened to the whole story. Again, if you enjoyed it, please go ahead, let me know. Let me know what you took away. Let me know if you were inspired. Take a screenshot and share it, whatever it might be. If you're interested in the Creating Your Career coaching program and you want to move forward with that, then you can visit my website. There is a dedicated page for the coaching program that provides a lot more information about what it looks like. I am currently enrolling now for new clients. And I am very excited again that each of you showed up and that you're even having these thoughts, because if you're having these thoughts, it means that you're on the precipice of something great and just doing something really cool. So I have no doubt that you are doing the exactly the right thing, exactly where you need to be. And please go ahead, let me know if you're interested in how I created my career or in creating your career. And the next step is for us to book a chemistry call if you are. So I look forward to hearing from you and learning more about your situation and what's going on in your life. And thank you so much for listening.